This sounds so Pollyanna, but I really do want to make a difference with my life. I understand that each one of us is just one person, and so your impact is going to be limited. But I feel like I can make a difference in this job. I feel like I can be a contributor to, kind of wise and prudent development of Kansas law.
Being committed to the rule of law is a primary quality. I think that having a good work ethic is a very important quality. I think that caring about the people that come before you as well as the rule of law is important. And caring about justice, that's the bottom line.
Being on the court was very interesting, mostly, at least at the beginning, because of the people that were there. And we didn't get a choice of cases that we were hearing. We would sit in panels of 3, and our cases were assigned to us. So we would just take whatever came along. And it was fun traveling around the state, and you got to know the judges really well that you travel with, and they would change every month. So that was good.
I never really thought much about being the first. I just never really worried about, I didn't feel like a trailblazer.
The year that I was nominated was the year that the Kansas City Royals beat the St. Louis Cardinals in what was then called the I-70 World Series. Well, Ronald Reagan had the practice of always calling personally his nominees, but they gave you a day's warning. So my little boys were just maybe 8 and 6, I don't remember how old they were, but 8 and 6 roughly. So I came home that night and I said, guess what? The president's going to call me. And they looked up at me and said, well, that makes you about as good as Bret Saberhagen. Bret Saberhagen was the pitcher for the Royals. So I told the president that when he called me the next day. He laughed so hard, and then a few days later the boys got a baseball signed by the president.
So they took some people off the list, and they added a couple more, and I got a call from Senator Dole at like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Said, your hearing's tomorrow, there's a flight out of Kansas City at 5 o'clock, be on it, and you need to be in the Justice Department at 7 o'clock in the morning. After I got the call from Senator Dole, so I was at my office. I called my parents and I said, find my children, and if there's time to bring them to the airport to put them on a flight with me, I would love for them to go. I went home and packed a suitcase and went straight back to the airport, made the flight, as did all the kids in their soccer uniforms and other things. When I got there, Senator Biden opened the committee hearing by saying he doubted that any of us would be confirmed. He hoped that none of our senators had led us to believe otherwise, but that it was very late in the election year, and thank you for coming. At the end, we did all get confirmed about a week later, but it was nail-biting time.
When I became a judge, I thought about my experiences as a lawyer and who had helped me be a better lawyer and what have you. So I use humor, and what I have learned from that, it's not like I'm cracking jokes, but there are moments when you can just see that this is an opportunity for humor, and the lawyers love it, and the clients are like, oh, is it okay to laugh in the courtroom, And courtrooms are where serious business happens, but it can also be done in an environment where we're real, we acknowledge our collective humanity or whatever.
As a judge, I remember I had one occasion where a man came in before me and said that he could not, that it was against his religion to be judged by a woman. and that he did not feel women were in a position to judge him, so could he please have a male judge?
Went into the district court, and again, it was an interesting beginning. I was sworn in, I think, around 11 o'clock, and I didn't know that while I was in the courtroom being sworn in, our county attorney was filing a lawsuit, and it was a state ex rel lawsuit. Topeka had its first adult theater in North Topeka called The Princess. And this was an action to close The Princess down. And presumably, the luck of the wheel, it was assigned to me while I'm being sworn in. And so here I am being sworn in this day. And then the afternoon, Olander, who is the county attorney, comes to see me and says that this bookstore has got to be, they've got to seize the materials. But they have to have, I have to look at it first and see if they should be seized. Okay? It was an interesting way to start the court, but
my oldest daughter, who is now almost 30, was 4 when I first ran for this position. And at one time, we all went downtown to the local festival, and there was another judge there, Buck Lyle, a friend of mine who was on the bench at the same time I was, and we went to this little deli to have a sandwich, and my daughter was real gregarious and kind of precocious, and she looked at him and said, what do you do? And I said, well, honey, he's a judge as well. And my daughter said, oh, there are boy judges?
One of those cases that we'd kind of been waiting, kind of moving towards the end because they thought they were working out. The attorneys came in and said, Judge, we're going to end up going to trial. We weren't able to reach an agreement. I come back into the courtroom to open court, and all of a sudden I see the defendant just almost pushing his attorney over, just trying to get his attention up, obviously, and I mean he's just yanking on him very violently. And I was ready to call for security because I didn't know what was going to happen with it. And the man was a man, and he whispered to his attorney, and the attorney then said, Judge, I know this is unusual, but could we please take a recess? And given the rather bizarre behavior, I had no hesitation, and I allowed the recess and stepped back down off of the bench. And a few minutes later, I received the message that there was going to be a plea agreement. After court was over, both attorneys came in and they just said, we thought you might like to hear what was going on with that. And by that point, I knew that the facts of the case were that there was a man who was accused of going into restaurants and bars and other things. He was a serial purse snatcher, but he would target women who put their purses under the chairs. And what they told me was that as soon as he saw that it was a woman on the bench, he didn't want to go to trial because he thought that I would hold it against him that what he was stealing were purses and whatever. And so the fact that I was a woman was enough to get him to decide to plead guilty to the charges rather than to go to trial.
To me, being the first woman meant that I had a lot to lose. It was like mine to lose. It was a really precious gift that I had received, an opportunity to serve in that way, but that I had a huge responsibility to discharge my responsibilities in a way that would make people proud and make it easier for the people who came after me, not just as judges, but in court administration and lawyers. And everybody is looking to the first person to know how to act.
You know, we're kind of it for the minority. I mean, we're it. The judiciary holds the line on the excesses of democracy. I mean, if not to be too high and mighty about it, but I mean, it's just true. But that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that the noblest goals continue to be pursued.